Hi folks, this is Module 2 now, and we're looking at the Novice problems. Here are the solutions. Again, I'm going to break them up into small quantities of solutions because otherwise the workbooks get to be very large. This is solution for 1 through 3. Let's take a look at the worksheet. Here's a worksheet. We're going to create some graphs in this worksheet, and let's see what we can do here. This data that you see on the right is very fortuitously organized in a fashion so where we can generate a column graph that looks at each one of these columns as a series with 4 elements in it: in-state, out-of-state, international, and all. Note that all is simply the sum of the other 3. We might want it in there for some purposes. We may want to take it out, but for now let's leave it in. Let's first create a 2D graph, column graph. So if I go to the Insert tab and then to Column, here's my 2D graph. Here is my graph. It looks a lot like what we see here, except it doesn't have the detail that we've got down here. I'll add that by engaging the graph, going to the green tab in the background for charts, going to the Add Chart Element, and I add a data table with key legends, and there we are, the same graph as we had before. If I don't like a particular element in here, one of the, for example, all, I can take that out. I simply engage it with my mouse, hit delete, and it's gone. Of course, I can return it by going to the return button. Chart titles, of course, if I want to change something there, I just grab this and I start to type, and stuff will appear. If something is not in there, and let's say I wanted to add a vertical title, I go back to engaging the chart, I go to the hidden chart graph, I go to Add Elements, Add Chart Titles, Add Tables, Add Axis Titles, about the vertical axis. There we go. If I double click that, I can type in whatever I want. I'll type in vertical, and there we are. Pretty easy stuff. Now we can also take this data and turn it into a different type of graph. Let's do this time a 3D stacked bar or column graph. So here is our 3D stacked column. There we go. I said I didn't like the all element in there, so again I can engage the all element with my mouse, hit return or delete, and voila, there it is. Here also, in this chart, I can also add an element. I can add data table with legends, just like I did before, and there we go. We see virtually the same graph. Let's do practice problem 2 now. Practice problem 2 is the ever important time series data. Time series data is data that's related to time periods. In this particular problem, I've got 13 time periods per year, which really is a 4-week unit and often used in industry to try to equalize the period that we're looking at. Sometimes months have more days than others due to holidays and the shortness of a month or the length of a month. So the first thing we're going to do is create a line graph of these 6 series, year 2007 to 2012, and I want a line graph, so I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to find my line graph here. You can see I can get a preview of what I got. That looks good, and I can engage that. It looks like what I have here, minus the addition of some titles and some fancying up of the information. So let me get rid of some of this stuff. Now let's do it in Minitab. For Minitab, I would simply copy this data that I had. I just copied all the way over from here to here. I can go to Minitab. I've actually already done this copying, and I've put the data here. So here's the data that we want I could copy over that if I want. There it is. I've copied over that. Now let's create a line graph for this information. Time series graph. I grab the data. Obviously, I go to graph. I look for an appropriate graph. Looks like time series might be good. Since we've got multiple graphs, let's hit OK. Let's now engage the data. I clicked here, and then I hit my Shift key and click here, and it gets the whole spectrum of data, so I can quickly select it over here, and it was already selected before, but there it is. I've got some options. I'm not going to mess with that right now. I hit OK, and there's my graph. What I can do with that graph now is I can touch the graph here. I can copy, Control C. I can go back to Excel. I'll paste it over here someplace. There it is. And it sure looks a lot like the graph I've got over here. So that's pretty easy. All right, then now let's take, in B, let's take these two series here, X21 and forecast X21. And let's create a graph out of that. It should look like this. Graph that you see here. We'll go to Insert. We go to Line Graph. And there it is. I'm not going to mess with it. We've already done it very quickly, but you can see it's the same graph. Now let's take that data over to, I'll copy it, and let's take it over to Minitab. So in Minitab, I've already pasted it. I can paste it here again. If I paste it again with the same title, it'll give me a _1 next to it, _1 over here. These are the same data. It's just differentiated. By the way, always put your labels in the gray area here. Data begins where you see the white space in this worksheet-like environment. So row 1 is where the data starts. Sometimes you don't put the labels in there. You can still identify it by the column 20 or whatever. So let's go and see if we can create a graph. This is in column 20 and 21. Let's see if we can do a time series graph here too. Multiple, since it's 2 series. Hit OK. And here are the graphs that I want. I select it. And I select it also. So I've selected those two. I hit OK. And there we go. There's our data. I can copy this. I can go back to Excel. And I can paste it over here. There it is. Next thing we're going to do is do some summary statistics of the data. And let's take a look at year 2007 for our summary statistics. So if we go to Excel and we want to do this in data analysis, we go to the Data tab. Here's Data Analysis. I want descriptive statistics. I hit OK. It says where's the series that you want. I grab this series, including the title. I click the title is there. Where do I want to put it? Let's say I want to put it right here next to it. Oh, I lost the data. You have to be very careful about that because it gets confused sometimes. Let's grab the data again. Label, hit the output, hit the box to show where we want the output. We want it here. We have some other information. Of course, we have to click the summary statistics. As I said before, it's kind of silly. That's why you're doing this anyway. To get summary statistics, why should you have to put a click in there? Hit OK, and there it is. You can see the data. So if I go over to Minitab and grab 2007 data, I think this is the same data, yeah. And then I say I want a graph, I want stats, I want basic statistics, and I want to produce the graphical summary. 2007, I hit OK. There it is. I can copy that over to Excel just as I did before. That information is here. And of course, we can see similar calculations. The mean is 29,046, 29,046, standard deviation 1388, standard deviation here 1388, etc. Let's look at the last problem. Last problem is fairly easy, and we can test this. We're going to perform a sort on the data. So I grab the data except for the observations. I could grab the observations if I wanted. That was important to keep track of that. I go to my Home tab. Here's my sort facility. I go to Custom Sort because I want to sort on two keys. The first one is the 40-foot container, number of 40-foot containers. The next one, the port. Now what this will do is the first sort happens by the values smallest to largest of the containers. The second sort by port. So if you had a tie, if you had two containers, number of containers that were the same, within that it would say, okay, I want you to arrange those two that are tied according to port. The first port will be the one that's closest to the front of the alphabet. The next port, after that, etc. That's done. Here's the answer to our problem. EG is the shipper for the 23rd observation. And then finally, we have a COUNTIF function here. COUNTIFs are wonderful because you're always trying to figure out if you can count something. This COUNTIF function is not the function that we want. We're trying to count the occurrence of Virginia in the port column of the port data, and we assume the port data is located where it is in the upper right hand corner. And so if I simply engage this count E2 Virginia, this is going to be incorrect. Why? Because it's only looking at what's in cell E2. If I want to count, or count, I want to count if in this particular case, I only want to count it if it's Virginia. If we have a count that is between E2 and E79, let's see what this would provide us. You can easily test these things, right? Count E2, E79, comma, equal VA, close paren, and I get an error. It says, I don't like to see this text like that, equal VA. It's going to have to be in quotes. So eventually what we see is that the VA has got to be in quotes. The proper COUNTIF formula is, let me get out of that. Proper formula is COUNTIF from E2 to E79, we encounter Virginia, and that's 18 values. So if we go to the column E, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There we go. That gets it. Again, the COUNTIF is a powerful tool, and so is the count for that matter. COUNTIF has that logical capability of counting if a condition is met. All right, that's the end of this presentation. We'll look at problems 4 through 6 next.